So let's get started. What's interesting, over the last probably year and a half, I've been preaching this, and the consulting group that I work with, we've been trying to push this concept. So it's nice to see the Spotify and the Duolingo CEOs come out and talk about making everything AI first. And so in your org, or have you started to do that, or does that concept make sense to you?
It
Some,
does conceptually. I'm from like a consult, or right now I work more really in consulting than anything else. So it's really about approaching clients and potential clients and seeing how they can. I think the biggest challenge I see is two things. There's not, for people who don't necessarily follow the space, there's a lack of awareness as to what is coming down the pike, what is already available, what that means for their businesses and the way they work. So it's first of all getting past that first hurdle and explaining that to them. Then when they have that sort of aha moment, the next part is really designing use cases that solve problems for their particular work needs and just taking it from there, taking it slow, holding their hand, starting with just basic use of LLMs, maybe just for text as well as code generation to solve issues giving them, before talking about agents, agentic flows, and things of that nature that maybe are a bit at this stage would go over their heads.
Sure. Hi, welcome, Bonnie. We're just getting started, so you didn't miss anything yet. And it's interesting, Sam, because I'm seeing the same thing I work with a lot of different type of consultants. And one of the things I'm trying to help them understand is how do they go AI first in their consulting practice? And to get rid of that fear, because a lot of consultants are a little worried that AI might take some of their work. And of course, I'm of the ilk that it's like, it's going to make it better. It's going to help. So we'll talk through some of that too. But this last one, I was happy to see this report out of the Wall Street Journal that Isabel wrote, where she was basically saying that this concept of becoming a prompt engineer it actually started out as a role. And I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but there were a lot of positions saying prompt engineer, and they're starting to dwindle. And it's going to be more like, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember back in the day, it used to be on every job application, it would say you have to know Word or you have to know PowerPoint. And now it's just assumed that you can use a Microsoft product. And so I think you're going to start seeing that in job applications or when you're bidding on consulting gigs. So that'll be interesting to see. So then this kind of leads to the next question. Can AI really understand my job? Can it help me do my job faster? And what I've seen is that people that are using or trying to use AI, they struggle on what exactly to use it for. Right. So if you've been doing this for a while, it's like you just use it for everything. That's great. But if you're new, what does that mean? And so what I talk about is, I'm going to show an example, is that I'm going to pop up. Before I do that, I'm going to show you what I build for clients. What's important is for every role, what we can do is for every role, we can customize a AI role plan. And what it does across the top, these are the general capabilities of that role. And then in the cells under the capability, it's a specific deliverable for that role. And so what this does is I work with clients. Part of the training is that we build out the AI role plan in the first 15, 20 minutes, and they customize it so it matches their role. And what it now does is it gives everybody kind of frame of reference of what they can go try to attack, right? So what can I go do? Hey, I can go build project plan documents. I can do sprint. This happened to be a agile project manager. I can build my planning agendas with AI. What are the things that I can do? And so what I find is this helps create clarity and kind of some focus, right? And so one of the things that I want to show you is that hang on a second, I lost my screen. So it's very cool. So let's see, let's do this. And we can just pick a role. If you want to pick a role for me, I'll take it. Otherwise, I'll just use a COO, which is what I typically use.
How about petroleum engineering?
Pardon me?
Petroleum engineering.
Petroleum. If I could spell it, it would be. When you say petroleum engineering, is that actual job title?
Correct. Petroleum engineer.
Oh, okay. Probably help if I spell petroleum, right? Can you see my screen okay? Is this big enough?
It's perfect.
Okay. All right. Oh, wait, hang on a second. I need to warm up the chat. All right, great. Now you could take a LinkedIn profile, whatever, but let's start with petroleum engineer. Just gonna give it the title. So it's gonna go through, and this is gonna create a first draft. And what the draft is doing is it probably gets you about 80% there. And then, like with any chatbot, we can go in and we can remove columns, change things that you don't actually do, and basically you can customize it. And what I tell people is it's probably want to get it about 95% there. It doesn't have to be 100% because as you work through these things, other things are going to come to you that are interesting. So I don't know much about a petroleum engineer, but does this look about right? Look across the top?
Yeah, it's mostly right. Some of those tasks need tweaking and are probably better assigned to other roles, but in general, it does cover it.
Okay. So out of these, let's dive into one and see how we would use this to work in the role. Are any of those interesting to you? The reservoir simulation reports, the drilling program documents, any of this information?
Yeah, it is. These are definitely work items that go with the role. Some are not as in-depth as perhaps what one would do every day, but that's to be expected.
Right. So is there one here that you see, like in these cells, that is definitely something that you do or that person would do?
Mhm. So the
Like,
under reservoir analysis, the very first one, reservoir simulation reports, which stems out of reservoir simulation itself, is definitely key to the role.
okay. So let's take that, and what it's going to do is say, which of these roles would you like to explore further? So again, what we would do is based, and especially based on your comments, we would spend a little bit more time and we would fine tune this, right? And if you actually have clients that you're going to do this with, you might fine tune it ahead of time, depends on how you want to work with them. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take that deliverable and we're basically just going to ask the LLM, how could you help me? Basically. So what it's going to start with is just going to give you a general overview of here are the modalities of this model, right? It can do text to image. So it can take raw input data, reservoir reports. So it's just giving you an overview of some of the things it can do. It can write custom Python or MATLAB code if you need it, and it goes through. We're going to say yes and go to the next stage because what the next stage is going to do is basically it's going to give us a workflow of the step of the prompts that you would use, the initial set of prompts to go attack this deliverable. Right. So the point I want to make here is that, when we talk about you have to be a prompt engineer and understand all this, that the AI is pretty good at prompting itself, right? Now, we don't want to take the human out of the loop because, we're not at that point yet. Maybe one day, but there's still a lot of things that we need to interject as we're working through it. And then you'll even see that some of these prompts, what it'll do is it may head you down a path, but you're going to want to tune these up a little bit. And then the models change so fast, this concept of prompt engineering sometimes goes away. So, for example, have you heard of chain of thought prompting?
Familiar with it.
Yeah, so the prompting strategy used to be like you would say, you give it something, you say, think about this step by step. And what it would do is it would tell the model to actually build a plan first, and then it would evaluate its own plan. And if it thought steps were missing, it would then add the steps in, and then it would go through, and then you got a better reasoning answer. What's happening is with the new models that are really good at reasoning, like ChatGPT, like 4.0 and oh 01, and like the Claude, the newer models, what happens is that it has chain of thought built in. So you don't need to prompt it that way. And in some cases, you can actually mess up, you can actually diminish what you were going to get out of the model by using that kind of prompting. And what I teach people is start basic, use the LLM to noodle through the problem, use them as your assistant and to help you figure out what the right things are to do. So it's more of a collaboration than a let me find the perfect prompt. So what ends up happening is it comes through and then you can, don't have time to do it here, but we could definitely do it later. But we just jumped through and we would just cut and paste these prompts into a separate window and just go through, right? So it's going to build the workflow for us. And I'm going to show you a simulation later that'll help make this a little clearer. And so you notice all we did so far is all we did was put in a role, right? And all we have to do is keep saying yes. And the GPT is going to walk us through. And so what it's doing is, and these estimates are always way more conservative than they really are. But it'll go through and it'll do an analysis on, hey, if you did this by hand without AI, this part probably take around 4 hours. And we can knock it down to an hour, 3 hours down to 30 minutes. And so it gives you an overall time saving for this specific deliverable. And when I do training, what I do is I tell people, look, all my training is hands-on. We go through one of the belts, and then basically they need to attack a role deliverable. Because what I tell people, and I've seen this over and over again, is if you're getting ready to do something, so let's say you create this report once a month or often, right? Maybe you do this every time. Actually, how often would you do a report like this?
It would really be infrequent. It'll be per project. So per project, you
Okay.
might maybe have 2 to 3 reports.
Okay. So what happens is if you go through and you automate it, the next, obviously, during the automation, what I've seen in training is that the first time somebody goes through it, if they use AI and save those prompts and start to build it into an automation, that takes about the same amount of time to get that task done. And then the nice thing is that it's built and you have it for next time. And then if you think about that from an onboarding standpoint of other employees, maybe you're really good at this and you spend a lot of time tweaking the prompts and getting them good. These are things that you can hand to people and they can use them, they can read them, so they have documentation of what it's doing, and then they can run them. So it helps bring up junior people and helps do some onboarding. So it's cool. And then the other thing, again, this is just a demo GPT. So now what it's going to do is it's going to go across all of the criteria across the top and say, hey, look, if we went through and automated all of these deliverables in these cells, this is the amount of time we would save over the month working together. So you can see, again, they're conservative, but these are numbers I've seen over and over again, like 50 to 60% time savings. So it's pretty cool. And if you use them for consulting business, it basically you can leverage your time better, right? If you do this yourself in your consulting business. And then the next thing, let's just take this one step further. This is the part that if you think back to the quotes at the beginning, right? The last one is where this is coming into play, or the last two. I'm not a big fan of just cutting payroll because we save time. That's usually not the way businesses look at things. But the second two make sense, right? So if you think about what Spotify was saying was before we hire anybody else, are there process improvements we can make first by using AI? And if we can do that, then great, do that. And then that saves us from having to hire somebody new, onboard them, and these kind of things, right? So it's not how do I fire somebody because we're now using AI. And then the other thing is obviously if you're freed up from doing kind of some of these rote tasks and you can spend your time thinking about it. I like to use the example. Did you ever see the show Suits? Right? It's
Suits. Yeah, yeah. But
yeah,
law firm,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah. And so the guy Harvey, right, is this hotshot lawyer, right, knows everything, been around forever. And then he meets Mike. And Mike he's got an an eidetic memory, remembers everything. He can put things together, so he's got some consciousness, but he doesn't have the experience that Harvey has, right? So if you think about that, that's exactly what we're doing right now with AI, is that we're Harvey and we're using the AI like Mike. It's, hey, go do this research while I'm thinking about and staying in the flow of solving this problem. And so if we start using AI like that, that's where we're going to start seeing the benefits, right? So that's that. Keep doing these examples. So one of the things is that not only can we talk about time savings, but we can also do a KPI focus. But all I'm trying to show here on this slide is that it doesn't matter the role. Like from business, HR can use it to create this job descriptions, sales, personalized outreach, marketing campaigns. If you go to the tech side, summarization of large log files, triage technical. I also develop and I use it religiously to help generate code and to debug things, right? People are worried about taking new developers and having them use AI to generate things. And that is a little bit of a concern because one of the things I've seen is that when junior developers generate code, they don't necessarily take the time to go in and figure out what it does. And so if you're more senior level and you're focusing on the architecture, it'll generate code and you know where to go look. And most more senior level developers will actually go investigate it to make sure they understand what the code's doing. They don't, and then to write really good tests around it so it helps. And then from a leadership standpoint, I've had a couple clients where we actually not so much one of the leaders driving the prompts, but like I would drive the prompts and they would collaborate. So I facilitate a collaboration with the AI while we were going through strategic planning, maybe building OKRs and then going into more detail around those things. And then what I want to show you, so now we went through it by hand, and I know I walked through it fairly quickly, but what I want to show you is this. This is an automation that one of the guys from the black belt training did. Trying to find so I can cut and paste it here. Let me see if okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through this. One of the things that I think people miss a lot when they're doing any kind of prompting is having it validate itself from different personas. And so what this guy did was he worked for an agency and he created an automation of something that used to take him close to 40 hours a week, he would say. About 40, he would bill 50 hours, but it would take him about 40. So he'd have to do the analysis to get the work done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk through as the account exec, right? So he's going to come through as the account exec, and then I've prepped prompt, so it makes it easier for me. So I have to think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to this marketing agency and I want them to help me build a plan. And I come through and it's asking me what I do. So it said I sell training, consulting, try to help companies achieve this percentage. So it's, hey, that's great. So are you ready to get started? Yes. And so keep in mind, this is the only part, this is the only thing I had to prompt it. Said, okay, so it's going to now hand it off to the psychology expert over here on the left, right? So it hands it to the psychology expert. And that person breaks down the dreams, massive efficiency gains, right? Market leadership, becoming a leader in the industry, team empowerment, higher profit margins, innovative reputations. So this is what my customers probably believe, right? And I tested it, and I'm also a customer of AI, and these things all kind of resonate with me. And so what are the past failures? And so I'm not going to go through these in excruciating detail, but you can see that these things are true, right? Overhyped tools, right? As we were learning about AI, what was happening, everybody was selling a tool. And there's still a ton of tools. I get on a regular basis when I have some downtime and I'm flipping through TikTok, I constantly get this thing with an image that has, I think it's 50, 25 different tools, 30 different tools. And it says over the next month, what you should do is you should immerse yourself in these tools and then you'll be an AI expert at work, right? And the tools are useful, but it's how do you use them, right? So I can use ChatGPT to prep me and prep a PowerPoint deck, but then I could then feed it into an app like Gamma that builds great PowerPoints, right? And so it's not necessarily knowing the perfect tool, right? It's understanding how to generate the information that I want to feed into a tool, right? Because even tools as good as they are, like Gamma, it's great at building a PowerPoint deck, but it's not great about helping you think through the strategy and how you want to tell your story, right? So it's going to go through, so this part, so it talked to the psychology expert, and then I'm going to say, yeah, let's just keep going. And so now it's going to hand it off to the brand story. manager, and it's going to start building out the story, right? And what's interesting, so what's good about this is that it's working off of the information from the beginning. And then obviously as it goes, it's using the information that we're building into the chat as context for the next set of answers. So when I talk about prompting, Copper, are you ready to move on to this step? Yes. So when I talk about understanding how to prompt, what I think through more is how do I want to build the context of the information, right? So if you think about, I'm going to fill this in and I'm going to keep talking. So let's say I'm going to just do 3 emails and I want them to go out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so now what it's going to do is the copywriter is going to create this sequence of emails. Now, the way I look at this is, so for example, let's take something as simple as I'm doing some business development and I'm looking for consulting work. So it's very similar to working through a resume, right? I'm sure you've run into this, right? Unless you get a warm lead, if you're hitting somebody cold, you have to describe what you do based on what they're looking for. And so what I have is a raw set of bullets that describe outcomes that I've achieved with my consulting business. And I take it and I just match it up against whatever the requirement, if it's a job rec or if it's just like an RFP is a little bit more complicated, but it's just a description of what they're looking for. I'll bang it up against there and I'll basically generate a draft that is pretty firm against what their job description is. If I just left it there, it would still look fairly generic. So all I'll do is I'll just change the persona of how I'm looking at that. So then I'll change it and say, look, if I'm the executive recruiter looking for consultants, what are the other key things that I might be missing in here? And so it'll go look at that job description from a different lens and it'll make some more modifications. And then I might make another pass at it and say, okay, now look at it from the account exec that has to deliver this to a client. What would they be looking for in my background? And then it would modify it again, right? So you go through a couple of iterations and you end up with a pretty good response to what they're looking for, right? So this is the case. So they come through, the copywriter writes some emails, and that's cool. Again, just trying to show the flow here. So I'm just going to keep going. Yes. And so now we're going to go to the creative director. And the creative director is now going to review it. And they're going to have some opinions on what things need to change. Add a stronger emotional hook, bring in a sense of urgency, and go through. And so he's reviewed these. So now what I want to do is I want to turn it back over to the copywriter and let the copywriter finish it. Right. So now the copywriter is going to go in and integrate the changes that the creative director had. Now, again, this was written by somebody that came out of our black belt program, right? And then the last thing is, it's going to finish up here. What do I want to do? So let's go to the account exec. And then so he's going to summarize what we did, right? And then give you some sort of explanation, total time. So again, given an estimated number of hours, what the rate would have been. So it would typically cost $9,000. He can get it done in $13,000. No, but he can get it done in, if I wasn't talking through this, could have done that in 5 minutes. And so this is the power of go through and look at your deliverables and build these automations out. Any questions? I know I'm rifling through that.
Okay, no, so just to confirm, I understand. So what it is the workflow is such that whatever deliverables are being used to build up this proposal for a client is being reviewed by each persona, and each persona is passing on its comments to the next up until they get a finished product at the end of the workflow.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it's, yeah, cool. So the other thing is, I don't know how much you used AI, but it can do some cool things like this. So let me pop up a new one. I think I can just copy this. So can you, if you look at this, can you ferret out what the risks are in this plan? Like how long do you think that would take you?
Probably 30 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Pretty good. Yeah, people that are used to looking at you give me Sorry, I'm typing this prompt and I want to show you something. Give me a general highlight, highlight any risks. Here, let me show you what I'm doing here. So what I did was I just copy and paste the picture in and then asked it to highlight any risks that it sees, right? And so the nice thing about this is that I don't know if, from an engineering standpoint, if you guys look at plot diagrams and things like that, but it'd be interesting to see what you could do by pulling those images in if you haven't done so already. But this is pretty good at coming through and looking at the phases, and then it talks through the potential risks, right? So it's got a critical path of congestion, certain wall. There's here where it looked at, it could see that there is an overlapping of dependencies. And so the timeline was off. I don't see it in this version, but oh, here it is. Overlapping tasks with the trades, right? So that's obviously risky, right? Because if the electrical isn't done before the drywall, then you can't finish it, right? So it's just cool. So what happens is that almost immediately, so again, what makes me a little crazy is when I see some of these training out there where they spend 2.5 hours explaining what GenAI is. And I think that what you really need to do when you're learning this kind of stuff is you have to put your hands on the keyboard. And you have to get your hands on the keyboard and you have to try it. And so what we've seen, this kind of a survey across all of our consultants, is that during white belt, already people are saving a ton of hours. And if you, I'll show you later, we use these transformation reports, but that show based on salary, number of hours, how much time, how much money they're saving. So you can convert it to an ROI. And so you can see this as we get to yellow through purple belt, there's more using it as a cognitive agent where you can integrate experts in the industry into how you do your analysis and then start to do some simple automation. And then by the time you get to black belt, you're building things like I just showed you with the marketing app. So the way this breaks down is that there should be highly predictable results, right? So one of the things I do when I talk to people, it's like if I sign something with somebody to do training, after the first hour, if they don't feel like they're getting what they want, no harm, no foul, I'll give you all your money back. And then what I guarantee is over 300% ROI for the teams. And all the teams have to do is if they follow the training and do the hands-on part, I use this AI transformation report, which actually is just good to do. It keeps people involved. It's almost gamifying it. And so we talk about how long do you think it would take you before AI, how long after, and then how many hours did you save? And then not only that, there's a Likert scale as to how good was the output, because I don't want to just make you faster if the output is terrible. So that's really not the point. If we can't increase the output, if we can't increase the output, what good is it, right? If it's not better or at least the same quality, then what are we doing, right? And we need to fix that. And so what I have another guarantee that if I can't get you over 300%, I'll keep working with the team until we get there. But what I've seen is usually by the second or third week, by the time we get into the complex problem solving, we're way over that 3% return, which is fun. That's why it's fun to get the guarantee because I'm so positive it'll be way higher than that. So it works out pretty well. But this is kind of the breakdown. And the way I structure this is that, again, in order for you to really integrate this into your job role, you need to take each of the things that you learn and build on it, right? So what you're doing is you're learning how to make, like people always ask me, what do you think is like the best interface for these models? And I think the best interface is the simple chat, or if you're into voice, that type of interface. Because what you're trying to do is you want it to be more of a collaboration with either somebody you're working with, like that Harvey and Mike relationship, or a team of people, right? If you get in a room with all your SMEs and you're working through something, if you can replicate that experience, then cool. And I'm not saying don't collaborate anymore, but If you're trying to work through a problem or you're just thinking through something, you want to be able to do that and either do it in a group and using the AI to help you find the things that you normally wouldn't think about. Can't tell you how many times I've been in meetings where we talk through everything and everybody thinks we got everything covered, and then we walk out of the meeting and there were like two or three key items we just forgot about. And so we have to go back and integrate them into the plan. And so basically, each of these belts increases the ability to understand how to logically prompt, right? And how to collaborate. A lot of fun. And one of the things that we see when we go into an organization, and I'm always careful with my consulting clients, is that the psychological safety of AI. This is still a big problem. A lot of the indifference I see are people just going, we're going to wait until we have like the perfect project management tool. They're always first adopters, right? There are people that are calling me, they're going, hey, project manager, and I want to be able to do that. Can you help me? So there are always those people, but I would say 90% of them are waiting for it to happen to them. And a lot of it's just fear or I think the embarrassment part's going to start hitting more and more people as more and more people talk about it. People that haven't had time, and this isn't that people are ignorant or anything like that. It's just everybody's busy doing their day job. And there's a lot of information coming at us fast and hard. And so you don't have time and you don't know where to go focus. And so it does get embarrassing because you're like, I don't even know what to do. Like, what do I type in here? What? And that's the point of the job, the role plan, is that it basically walks you through that initial blank whiteboard concept, right? One of the things we always had in consulting was you never want to walk into you don't want the client to work off a blank whiteboard, right? You want to get something on the board, even if it's wrong, so that they can correct it and we can change it, right? And so that's the purpose and the reason that I do it that way, because if I want to get them to integrate it into everything they do in their job, I need to help lead them through how to get started and then what to go do next. And then eventually, obviously, they start to build confidence, and then that's when the transformation really starts to take hold. One of the things is that I don't typically do one-on-one training. I do training with the teams because what I don't want to have happen is I want the team to learn together because for a lot of reasons, right? One is they can help each other, and the other is that if they elevate each other at the same time, it becomes part of their DNA. They really get excited about it, and then they want to share prompts, and then they want to collaborate on, hey, what's the perfect automation for this report that we do every month? And then now you can have a team of people working on that. And that's just pretty cool when you start to see people working that way. One of the things that I noticed, and this is even old, is that if you go and look for stats on AI psychological safety, nobody cares. Nobody's looking at it. But AI tools, of course. And so everybody's talking about the tools. Nobody's talking about the actual employee, which is they're the people we need to bring up to speed. They're who we need to help feel comfortable because they're the ones that are going to do a bulk of the work. So I'll just talk about this briefly, right? So I work with this it's almost not really a consortium. It's, it's not a condominium. What's that term? A co-op. And so I work with a group of people. We all invest and we pay a monthly fee. But what we do is we actually work together. We get together at least once a week. If we're creating new courses, we're meeting every day, just like an agile team. And we're working through the prompts and testing them and beta things with our clients and things like that. This training's been beaten up through hundreds of consultants. And the nice thing is they all have different roles, like COOs of big companies, CIOs. And so we get a good breadth of experience, and they really beat up the training. So it's a lot of fun. So there's really three things we need to do to help somebody integrate this into their job, right? The first thing is create this role plan. And again, the first cut, about 80%, but we could easily, again, it's AI. So I could say, drop out the column, in this case, right, tax management, remove the column tax management. I don't do that. Replace it with something else you think, or replace it with X, right? So Sammy, you were talking about this at the beginning. One of the first things we would have done is gone through and swapped out what those titles should be, run it again, and then look at each one of the deliverables in there and called it exactly what it needed to be. And by doing that, we help build the context better so that when we then go to generate the workflow, we're talking about real context that AI could understand. The interesting thing is too, is that one of the things that I do a lot is if I'm going to do something like, let's say, variance analysis reports in here that's highlighted, I might ask ChatGPT, do you know what a variance analysis report is? And it'll come back and describe it to me. If I like the description, cool. If I don't, then I'll tell it what it's supposed to be, right? Maybe I have my own document that describes it, or I'll take the time to describe it to whether it's Gemini or whatever. And then now when I have it generate the workflow, it's going to do it in context with what I know it to be. And so that's what I mean by when we talk about customizing the AI role plan, right? That way we're not getting generic responses back. And the power of this is that we're using AI to help us build and work through what this plan should be, right? If I had to sit down and think through what are the core competencies of what I'm supposed to be doing, and then under those, what are the 8 top deliverables, it would take me a while, right? And so this way I can get something done fairly quickly and just work through it. Then the second thing is to go through the training, right? And like I said, I do it with some sort of a break, usually about a week between belts. And the reason I do that is because at the end of each belt, I give you homework to do. And the homework is pick one of those role deliverables and use AI to solve that problem. And the good thing about that is that you may do great, right? And you start saving some time, right? On average, we're seeing $4,000 gains, but maybe you run into problems. Great. So then we go in and we look and we go into the next belt, or we get together on a fast track and we talk through what are the problems, what are the obstacles that are running into you're running into, and then we look at AI on how to fix that. And so the nice thing about that is that we can basically teaching ourselves how to work with the AI to fine tune what we're doing, right? And then the last piece of this is these transformation reports as we go through everything. So we go through an hour of training, building a transformation. I'm sorry, we do the automation, then we build a transformation report. And so if I'm working with a team, they start to see week over week how much time they're saving themselves. And then they can also take that back to their management staff and show them the money they're spending is worth it. So it's a direct line to ROI for the training, which is good because if I ask other trainers, what's your ROI? They're like, it depends. No, it doesn't depend. You can absolutely measure it. And if you can't measure it, you're not doing it. And so we have to build that mindset so that this AI stuff isn't fuzzy. If you want to talk more, or you can either use this or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.